Welcome back on Sunday Live, and tonight, as the IEBC, its chair and the president prepare to file responses to the NASA petition, we look at the petition and the implications politically and legally with lawyers Jennifer Shamala on my immediate right, Nelson Harvey, and political analyst Gabriel Muduma and Haman Manyora. Talk to us. The hashtag is Sunday Live. You can also text us on 22422. Very quickly, let's take a look. Excuse me. Some of the issues raised in the NASA petition, just some, of course, we couldn't cover all of them. One, they're talking about the result transmission system having been flawed and compromised, discrepancies in Form 34A that tallying the results at the polling station level, inconsistencies in Form 34B, that is at the constituency level. They were talking about non-designated polling stations, inconsistent voter turnout, talking about a huge number for the presidential vote and not the other tiers, and voter bribery, inducements, etc. Of course, it's important to mention here that the respondents in the case, that is IBC and the President Kenyatta, and the chairman of IBC will respond, and we'll see what they say. So all this is as claimed by NASA right now. Until they respond, we'll hear the responses. Ultimately, it depends what evidence will be adduced in court. But looking at the petition right now, and I assume you've all looked at the petition, would you say NASA is on to something? I'll start with you, Jennifer.
I looked at the petition, and what I can say from the onset, that the entire petition is surrounded around nothing but a political myth. And what is a political myth? It's a narrative that is created in order to really explain, to defend the raison d'etre of a political entity. A political myth is something that is based on a framework. First of all, you conceptualize something. Secondly, you conceptualize this thing and you then begin to disseminate it. You disseminate it to the people. Thirdly, the third thing is you start the ritualization process of this myth, and I will explain it in detail later. And the ritualization process is getting the people to believe that this myth, this narrative you created, is in fact a fact, and it is the truth. And the last thing is then the sacralization of your myth, in that your reason for existence is this narrative and this myth that you have created. Looking at that petition, I found I was quite startled that they actually attributed the death of Chris Musando as one of the reasons as to why the elections were rigged. And this is where the myth has been created, the political myth. Yes.
Plus the other issues.
Yes.
You're calling this a myth. Ultimately, it depends on the evidence they adduce, isn't it?
Yes, but I didn't see, because they said it was categorical in the affidavit of the Right Honourable former Prime Minister that the reason for the death of Chris Musando was because he would have stopped the process that he alleges was unfair now and not credible and fraudulent.
Right, Nelson?
I think the petition by NASA and Raila Odinga is well grounded. I'll just pick out a few issues that demonstrate the strength of that petition. And it needs to be understood, the manner in which an election petition is handled is quite simple and straightforward. You need to be able to see, just from the evidence of the petition itself, if it meets the threshold. And this can be determined even without anticipating the response by the respondent.
By the other thing.
Yes. Now, one of the most key issues that have been raised in this petition is this, that by the time the declaration was being made on the 11th of August, IBC had not received Form 34A and 34B that constitute about 3.5 million votes. I think that is a big chunk of votes, and there appear to be a big mistake on the part of the IBC. And this is not anything that needs to await an interrogation at a trial. It is what was streamed live and everybody saw. That is number one. Number two, the manner in which the results were being transmitted. By the time we were going for this election, the Court of Appeal had already settled the process and the manner in which the election was to be oversighted. The results at the polling stations were to be counted by the presiding officers. And then simultaneous with the transmission to the National Tally Center, the results were first to reach the constituency tally center. But what the IEBC did and what everybody saw on air was the opposite. In fact, the results were streaming straight from the polling stations to the National Tallying Center. And that is a big issue. Number three, there are about 10,000 polling stations that were designated 2 days before the election. and these were not within the 3G, 4G network coverage. And as a result of that, it was not possible to verify and authenticate the results streaming from that area. And again, these account for about 5 million votes, a big chunk. And then there are irregularities within the Form 34A and Form 34B, some of which are not signed, some of which do not have a stamp, some of which are not dated, some of which are not attested to by the agents or the candidates. And then these account for about 7 million votes. And then there is that intriguing aspect where there is the treating and enticement and sometimes threats on the voter. And a lot of emphasis has been made in respect to the participation of state officers towards the campaign, the launch of projects a few days before the election period, the advertisement in the government portal and the media of the achievements of the government, as well as the threats we saw being made to the chiefs in Makueni. This, amongst many other things, if viewed from that primary threshold, indicates that the petition has a good chance of success. If you were to ask me, I'll put it as 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10?
Yes.
Again, based on evidence, isn't it?
Yes, based on evidence.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Hussein. I don't have that extended legal advantage that my two friends have. But I think me and Professor May actually trying to introduce just a little bit from what we were able to read. And I think from where I'm sitting is it's changed from a stolen election to what you'd call actually questioning the processes of IEBC. That said and done, I think I'll just allude a little bit to what Harvey has said in terms of forms that were not signed. Forms that, you know, I mean, just even signing the forms, that's what puts me to questioning. Did you have agents in all the polling stations? You are supposed to have that. They were the people who are actually to be, you know, sitting on behalf of NASA. Did that happen? And that's something that many people have questioned. It's not the responsibility of IEBC. It's not the responsibility of Jubilee. It was the responsibility of NASA to ensure that they have the capacity and the capability to ensure that all the polling stations are manned by their agents. Did that happen? Me think not. Simple and straight.
But they're questioning the process. The processes,
and that's what
in some cases they're talking about the agents not being allowed actually to do their work at the polling stations. That's what NASA is claiming. So my question is, you don't think they have a case? Is that what you're saying?
Really, from what I've seen,
from what you've seen,
from what I've been reading, you know, just interacting with people who, you know, are in the legal realm, when Harvey talks about 7, many people have actually put it to the threshold of probably about 2%. And I'll be shocked. I mean, we have to wait and see. 2%. You're talking, I mean, not 2%, actually 2 out of 10. And we're looking at that. I mean, you have to listen to everyone. I'm not saying what they have cannot or should not given a chance. I mean, you're talking about the Supreme Court. Let's see what they produce. I mean, it's all about evidence. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Okay, Haman.
Hussein, you must allow me. I've not been here for about a month to say hi to viewers who have been wondering where I've been. I'm alive.
I'm questioning where
he ran away from the number series.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to deviate. I wouldn't want to deviate. But now that you brought that up,
yes,
we've seen so many on Twitter,
yes,
and even on the Botu saying Haman should now explain where his numbers went, because you kept on saying NASA will win by 50, I think 54, 55%.
Yeah, so
you can explain that later. First, answer this first question here.
Later to come, eh?
Okay.
But now I must say hi to viewers, tell them I'm alive. I must congratulate Kenyans for being peaceful. While I was not in the local media, I did a lot of interviews with foreign media, and I want to tell Kenyans one thing. Every time they were interviewing me, they wanted to know, especially on radio, whether Kenya was burning. The moment you told them Kenya was peaceful and we are going about our own business, they would lose interest immediately. That shows you what people think about us. And we need to be very, very careful. So I'm saying I'm thanking Kenyans and our politicians for being peaceful. I'm thanking voters. I'm congratulating those who won. I know some people fought very hard wars. I'm also thanking voters who in some areas, like I mentioned earlier, those flashpoints. I remember I mentioned places like Busia, where people were trading tribal narratives. So that there's a governor, because he's Teso, you are a Luya, you want to come and you ride on the Luya thing. I'm happy for the people of Busia. I congratulate the Luyas who saw beyond this and re-elected their governor disregarding the tribal. So we congratulate Ojamong, here is called a deck, so speaker, and tell Otuoma next time he might win. Now, when you talk about this petition, like many other people I've talked to, on the face of it, it would appear NASA has a lot of weight. But you must put a rider. That is assuming what we are being told is evidence is really evidence. Because my fear has been this, from the word go, my fear has been, Jubilee is so smart. What they do, they even throw evidence, so-called evidence, you know, leakages, no decoys to distract you and then to make you lose your credibility.
You call it bait.
So, yeah, bait. Really. So if that is not the case, if it is indeed is true, what we have seen you and I, on the face of it, really this is very evidence, very heavy evidence. It could lead to another election.
That's what you think,
yeah.
from what you've seen so far.
Yeah.
All right, I'll read a tweet here that this is a question I wanted to ask, how you compare the Supreme Court decision and generally the petition of 2013 and now, and what impact it may have in this case. And I read this tweet here. Somebody says, I didn't get his name, but I think the 2013 precedent set by the court will work against the NASA petition. Is that what you think, or how do you think it may or may not work against or for the NASA petition?
I think the precedent that they're referring to is the precedent that spoilt votes would not be counted.
Yeah.
But what they also, one of the prayers in the petition of NASA was, and what they did spell out very clearly was that all courts are bound by Supreme Court decisions except the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court can review its own decisions. So this is probably what they're referring to. What I don't understand is the logic and why it is that the NASA brigade would want the spoiled votes to be counted. Because if they were to be counted, I think they're about, what, 400,000 of them?
Yeah.
And even if we assumed we put all those 400,000 into the NASA bag,
what difference would it make?
What difference would it make?
But in terms of the process, what difference would it make for the that's why I'm sure that
the issue of the
following the process.
No.
Will it have an impact on the process?
Yes. Would it have an impact on the outcome? Not so much the process. Their argument is that the spoiled votes should be counted. But spoiled votes counted for and on behalf of whom? Perhaps Javi, my colleague here, can expand on that particular issue.
Now, I think if you interrogate the petition by Raila Odinga this time, it's quite precise. He's not saying that he won the election. He's not saying that certain votes, if given to him, he will be the one to be declared winner. He's saying that there was no election at all. In fact, he's made it quite clear in his petition that these are computer-generated results. Now, backwards to 2013, by the time the Supreme Court was considering that petition, it had thrown out all the evidence for the reason that the evidence had been put in a little bit late.
Yeah.
Now, the question is the Supreme Court, as currently constituted, better placed to make a decision than the one it made in 2013? In my opinion, it is better constituted, because a great chunk of the judges who sat in 2013 had just made their maiden entry into the judiciary. They were, so to speak, in their novitiate. They didn't know so much. In fact, save for a few who were about to, none had ever seen how an election petition looks like. Now, if you see the manner in which the courts have now brought out the clarity in respect to the conduct of the presidential election, the only complexity between a presidential election and a National Assembly election is the number. So that the election is conducted in 290 constituencies. Now, what comes out quite clear is if you're able to point out with clarity, with evidence, and with the resort to the law, that there was no election properly conducted in all those 290 constituencies, or in any of those, that will indicate for a fact there was no election. Then for a fact it will come out that what IBC have declared will be a fraud. And you need not interrogate the margin that my colleague is talking about, even if you were to discount this.
That's what I was talking about in terms of process. Because NASA keeps on talking about whether the law was followed in handling the whole process, and that is why it needs to be.
But Hussein, I mean, Habib's explaining one point about the process, and I'm also wondering, you're looking at the same incubator process that also brought out the governors, the senators, the MPs, and the, all these...
Which Odinga actually talked about initially when he was disputing the results.
Exactly, and that's why if it can produce the same incubation, the same incubator which actually gave us the results of the president. It is funny.
They just popped
on the screen there. If we are interrogating a process, then we must also put into question the same process that gave us all these other elective posts. Does it make sense to you?
I think the biggest strength that seems to support the argument by Muduma is that look at the numbers. We have more than 2/3 majority in the National Assembly, in the Senate, and even in the governors. But you see, let's take the converse of that argument. In 2007, Kibaki was declared a winner, yet he had a minority in respect of the elected members of parliament. So this argument cannot hold water. And truth be told, the anxiety as regards any general election is never on any electoral seats below the rank of governor. The concentration is always on the president.
Wakili, no. Now you brought the 2007. You brought the 2007, which we all know when the observers came. When the People Electoral Commission came, he said he did not know who won. This is a different ballgame. You have several people. You have international observers who have come in and given it a clean bill and saying, you know what, it has passed the threshold of a free and fair election. So you cannot actually bring these two together. They are two different animals, and that's why I'm questioning. Question this process makes sense. Everything else they got right. I think that should be our starting point to say.
Okay, what Muduma is talking about, if I was to put it in a question for all of you, maybe Habib should start by responding to this.
Yes.
If, for instance, the court rules in favor of NASA, are we talking about the president? Okay, because this is the presidential election petition. But what did it mean? What impact will it have on the other tiers? Governor's election, senator's election, woman rep election? Because you're talking about the process of the election.
You see, you take a case to court. One case cannot apply to another case. Assuming the issues for which this election will be nullified apply to you and you had a petition, you must have petition. It can't apply in a blanket.
So can you
if
use
you had a case in court, if you had a case in court, if you had a case in court, then your lawyer will simply cite.
It will be bad because of time. Okay, but you respond to Muduma.
I think I've heard lawyers talk, and I'm not a lawyer. So the heaviest lawyers I had to talk was the Grand Mullah, and I think Waiganjo and PLO.
The Grand Mullah is not a heavy lawyer.
I was shocked. I was shocked to hear him say, in 2007, CORD had to show the Supreme Court. CORD had to show the Supreme Court where the 7,000 votes would come from, right? So the Grand Mullah then said, this time, NASA has to show the Supreme Court where they will subtract 1.4 million votes that the Uhuru has, the difference. And I found that very simple reasoning. This case is not about material votes. This case is simple. Can the NASA team show that somebody sat somewhere, planned and executed the plan to subvert the will of the Kenyan voter? It's just as simple as that. Once you cite consistency, systematicity, intentionality, you rest your case, you go home and let them talk, you come back at the last day, and the case is decided in your favor.
Right. Javier has talked about the composition of the judges, saying it's better off this time, obviously because of experience, and new other judges have come in. But ultimately, and we talked about this at some point with some of you last week, but ultimately, do you think this case will be decided by what will transpire in the courtroom, or are events or happenings or political statements outside the courtroom, will they also have an impact in this case?
I think we discussed this last week, and I said very categorically that the reason these judges are judges of the Supreme Court is that they go through a vigorous process, a vigorous vetting process. To assume that they would then be influenced by outside factors would really be unfair on the judges of the Supreme Court of Kenya. Even in 2013, and I said that as much, to suggest that that court needs to be redeemed is not really, it's disturbing. Because like I said, the court of 2013 was headed by none other than Willie Mutunga, who was a father of the civil rights movement, who was really, who today is an envoy for the Commonwealth, to suggest in the Maldives, to suggest that that court could have been compromised and needed redemption is really quite inappropriate. I trust in the Supreme Court. They've gone through a vigorous process. They're not going to be influenced by outside factors. They deal with such matters all the time, whether it's the Supreme Court, whether it's the appellate court, etc. They can't be. Okay. They will go, like I said, they will make the decision strictly on the evidence that is presented before them.
Right. Javi.
Of course, any judge has passed the IQ test, the intelligent quotient test. Otherwise, they will not be the judge. But there is the JQ, the jurisprudential quotient test. And as you consider this, we need to take into account that the Supreme Court is a very disadvantaged court. It does not have the benefit of variety, as does the High Court and the Court of Appeal. And there will be biases. There will be perceptions of compromises. And even as Mutunga was leaving office, the entire Supreme Court had a big credibility test that it had to answer. And it's yet to be seen whether that test had been answered. Because there was that infamous case of the bribery of one of the judges with a substantial amount of money. And Professor Manyora's friend, the Grand Mullah, went on record and said, Justice Tunoi did not collect the 300 million on his own alone. He collected it on behalf of 2 other judges. And you see, these individuals manipulated the hearing of the retirement case in respect of Justice Tunoi and Justice Rawal, so that it progressed so fast. By the time the decision had been made, then the tribunal trying Justice Tunoi could not proceed. So we never got to interrogate. To know exactly who it is. And then it's quite intriguing. You'll find that the 2 lawyers who are the main accusers of Justice Tunoi, and even one of the lawyers who is alleged to have been the conduit of the transportation of money, appear to be on the same side in this matter. And that is something that at least the Supreme Court needs to work so hard. I do not say that one party will want to determine for the other party who to represent it, but I think this is a concern that must come out. And then how do you address this concern? Bearing in mind these perceived biases, some of which are real or have not been debunked, I think it will be very important, and like the case in 2013, each and every of the 7 judges be given an opportunity to write and read their decision. Yeah. It's only through that we're able to interrogate what has this judge added to the jurisprudence in respect of election petition? Or is the judge just hiding behind the comfort of collective responsibility, so that when a decision is right, he gets comfort in it, and if the decision is wrong, then he says, okay, it was not my decision alone. Right. I think those are some of the considerations that, much as the decision will be made purely on the basis of the law and the evidence, these are concerns that must be rested, because, truth be told, there is a big population of Kenyans that feel that the presidency has rotated within 2 communities for a long period of time. And irrespective of how meritorious this decision may appear to the lawyers, that population will still hold the notion that we've been disenfranchised. But the decision the judges are supposed to make, regardless of the perceptions Kenyans have about political perceptions, still will have to be based on the evidence produced in court. Absolutely. That you agree with? Yes. Definitely. Okay, Mzoma.
In fact, that's what I think should actually form the basis of the results that will come from the Supreme Court. And if they're going to base it solely on the evidence, rather than when we talk about, there was somebody we were with here who was a chairman, I think, of, an element in NASA who was telling us that they are fronting 2 things. Number 1, to the Supreme Court, and actually at that particular time, you are still not going to court. They said, we are not going to court. At that particular time, they were eyeing to go to the court of public opinion. And they have, NASA has categorically said that we will continue fashioning that. And I quote this from Raila Odinga when he said that at the late Musando's burial yesterday. So there are 2 things that I think they are pushing forward. That's, the court of public opinion, and then the court at the Supreme Court. And if I get it right, if we are going to or if they are going to make the Supreme Court uneasy, because number one, you're talking about the element of bias in the Supreme Court. I don't know where this one came from. You're talking about
well, looking at it. Been there for a period of time. So
then you don't trust the Supreme Court, and you don't trust the Supreme Court, and that's also an issue. And that's why I think words or statements like, you know, this is the only chance that the Supreme Court has to redeem itself, you know, will leave Kenyans questioning, what if you do not have evidence? Do they still continue, you know, to make a judgment, you know, based on evidence that they have, or are they going to weigh your words and make it a political outcome? So I still think whatever the outcome will be, I think it should be based primarily on the evidence presented. Otherwise, I don't think we are going to
The Supreme Court is a court. Unlike any other court, it must base itself on law and on evidence. But beyond that, you must also remember some things. I'm not a lawyer, but sometimes I don't understand these lawyers. Shamala, how do people work and have it? You see, a presidential petition is not an ordinary petition. And therefore, you cannot expect the Supreme Court to conduct itself in looking at this petition in the manner you would conduct looking for evidence in the other petitions. I draw the attention of lawyers in this country to the Constitution that gives 14 days. You think the people who gave 14 days were fools? They had a reason. You can't conduct this election by looking at the evidence to see how much the material evidence here and there. Because then even looking at Form 34A, 40,863 vis-a-vis what was in the portal, even 3 months you can't do it. And if you are to do it in an ordinary way, at some point you might have to order a recount of the votes, scrutiny. 21 million ballots. They come, you account for those which are not used. We remain with 15 point something, we scrutinize 1 year. Why did they give 14 days? Lawyers don't seem to know that.
It's in the Constitution.
What the court is looking for is not just the simple matter of law and the evidence. You see? And that's why I said, if they see an attempt that is proved a successful attempt to subvert the will of the people, then that is enough. They don't look at it like other petitions.
Exactly.
And if you look at it, if you were there in 2013, the submission from the Grand Mullah in trying to convince the court was again not just based on law and evidence. He brought in other factors.
Policy.
But more so, the Attorney General. If you go and play down what the Attorney General said in court in 2013, you then see he's persuading the court to consider factors outside the law and evidence. And therefore, I began by saying, this is a simple, straightforward case if the NASA lawyers don't lose it in the status conference. In the status conference, it must be reduced to something simple. Was there an attempt to subvert the will of the Kenyan voter? That's all you need to prove, nothing else.
Right. We are 34 minutes now, so I think we'll have to wind it up there.
But I'm not. You need to give me 1 minute.
We needed more time. Okay, I'll give Jennifer.
Ultimately, I was a bit concerned, and it is about what I call the political myths which have been churned out, that the court needs to be redeemed. It has now become another political myth. I think it's unfair to cast aspersions on the Supreme Court of Kenya.
Okay. Finally, Haman.
Finally, people have been asking in media why I talk to 54% and it has come the opposite. The answer is simple. One, didn't I say that the people who had the numbers didn't have strategy? And did I also qualify the meaning of strategy even in war? You could have all the soldiers, you could have the fighter jets, you could have naval ships fighting a smaller, a less equipped army with better strategy that would beat you. And I don't talk about rigging. Rigging could be part of the strategy to counter that rigging. But finally, for those who are for those who are asking 54 versus 44, why are we in the Supreme Court?
No, one thing I'll agree that he called it right. But the problem is with Professor, his mirror was subverted. I think that's where he got it.
But I'm saying, why are we in the Supreme Court?
Why are we in the Supreme Court? What I'm saying, there are several things, Professor, that we need to understand. And this comes in glaring light on the seats that Jubilee has won. And that's a fact. The fact that they have both houses That's a fact. The fact that they are leading also in the COG, that's a fact.
Could it be the fact that the cutters of the computer chips?
No, what? I mean, did they get the same computer in Nyamira?
The computer can hatch the president.
There's complaining and campaigning.
The computer can hatch a governor?
No.
Okay, we don't want to get there, Haman. Come on. But
That's
finish it, man.
I mean, you are looking at people who did 500 plus campaign rallies versus those who did under 200. You cannot compare this, Prof. And probably next time, you need to advise your people properly. You know, when it comes to campaigning,
the taste of the pudding is in the...
So the case is now at the Supreme Court. Let's see how it goes. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. Lawyers Jennifer Shamara, Nelson Harvey, and political analyst Simon Manyora and Gabriel Muduma. Keep talking to us. The hashtag is Sunday Live. You can text us on 22422. We're back after this break.